Humans Are Weird special animatic from Humans Are Weird. We took a vote. Leave them alone. It wasn't every day one was called before the Ethics and Sentience Research Committee. It certainly had never happened to Feeling the Joy of Generosity. Even so, he was strongly aware that he was in the absolute surface of disgrace. If they didn't want to drag him up to the surface to wither, he didn't know anything about animal sentience, let alone animal sapience. And it's kind of my job to know things about animal sapience. He released a long sigh of gas and shuffled his feet, he was proud of those feet, along the floor of the too-sterile building. Feeling the Joy of Generosity could feel the pulsing of the electrical systems in the walls, and his tendrils twitched longingly. However, nothing was quite so alluring as the steady rush and flow of the nutrient-rich water that flowed through the pipes. He wondered if it were such a good thing that the other species treated it with such harsh minerals. Surely the danger of an overwhelming outgrowth wasn't that bad. An ungulate passed by him, the water in its transport tank sloshing invitingly. Before he could think better of it, Feeling the Joy of Generosity raised a hand and dropped it into the tank. The ungulate let out a disgusted blurp and shimmied out of the tank as fast as he could. Feeling the Joy of Generosity's hand dissolved in the water, and he pulled back his neural tendrils with another sigh. "My apologies, friend ungulate," he said in the human language. He thought most ungulates had learned human language vibration. This one, however, simply shuffled off down the hall, abandoning the now contaminated transport tank. Feeling the Joy of Generosity reached in with another hand to try and remove the solid material, only to have the second hand dissolve as well. Giving up the attempt to reclaim his duff matter, he coiled all his exposed tendrils in and shuffled down the hall towards the room where the committee waited. The door swished open at his approach, dislodging quite a bit of his head covering. Feeling the Joy of Generosity pulled those tendrils back in as well, and tried not to think of it as a bad omen. A Shitar sat at the head of the table, and a small elderly flight of winged hung from perches on the ceiling. The ungulate representative had abandoned her comfort tank to drape herself across the human representative's shoulders. A ramp had been formed into the table, leading to a concave depression in the center. Feeling the Joy of Generosity centered his minerals and shuffled up to the depression. He relaxed into it. He carefully formed a pair of bright yellow eyes to point at each of the representatives. The animals all squirmed uncomfortably until he had settled his form. "Feeling the Joy of Generosity," the Shitar began, her neck frills spreading out in a stern display of her colors. "Do you know why we called you here?" "I suspect so," Feeling the Joy of Generosity replied, making sure that his outer duff layer was showing the proper colors of submission to the Shitar. "Good," the Shitar said. "Now, is it true that you perform scientific experiments on humans without their knowledge or consent?" Feeling the Joy of Generosity squirmed uneasily. "I didn't really mean to," he offered. "It just sort of happened." The Shitar laid back her frill and focused her faceted eyes on him in a long, searching look. The human was laughing and petting the agitated ungulate soothingly. "How in the name of the first flight do you accidentally perform a scientific experiment on a sapient being of that mass?" demanded the leader of the winged flight. "Well, it started last fall," Feeling the Joy of Generosity began. "I noticed an odd behavior in the humans on the base. I got curious and kept watching. Then I changed a few variables. Then I took notes so I wouldn't lose the data in walking. Before I knew it, I had a case study going." "What was the behavior you noted?" the ungulate asked. "Well," Feeling the Joy of Generosity began, "they were stepping on my leaves." "Humans' feet are 3 times the size of any one of us," the winged pointed out. "They can hardly avoid stepping on everything." "Ah, yes," Feeling the Joy of Generosity agreed, "but they were going out of their way to step on particular leaves." "Begin at the beginning," the Shitar ordered him with a wave of her hand. "I was out sunning," Feeling the Joy of Generosity said. "I wanted to catch the last warm afternoon radiance of the year before the snows came. You know, if we don't do that, we can go deep dormant over winter and lose decades of life." "You were sunning?" the Shatar noted coolly. Now, the cold and the sun had dried out a lot of my leaves, feeling the joy of generosity, went on. Most of them I managed to absorb into my main tendril mass, but there were a lot that were just way too large and tough for me to digest over winter, so I just drained them and let them blow off. You are aware that we do not allow the shedding of sentient and sapient exposed biomatter without proper precautions, the Shatar pointed out. I am now, he admitted. Continue, the Shatar ordered. Well, I was sunning there. I was kind of lonely, he went on, when one of the human mechanics approached. I wanted to talk to him, but I really needed that sun, so I just watched him walk past. Then the wind picked up some of my rejected leaves and sent them skittering across the ground. One landed in front of the human, and he broke stride to step on it. He grinned. Feeling the joy of generosity, paused and mulled over his next statement. He really enjoyed it, I think, he said. Anyway, he saw another leaf and changed his course to step on that too, but after that he just went on his way. There were other desiccated leaves remaining? The undulate asked, interested now. We are investigating feeling the joy of generosity's actions here, the Shatar reminded them, not human behavior. There were other leaves, feeling the joy of generosity, replied. He did ignore them. I observed this behavior in other base humans, too. I had nothing else to do while I composted for the winter, so I started making the crisp leaves purposely and leaving them in various locations. Then winter came. He shuddered at the memory of the weeks trapped into the icy blanket that blocked out the sun and drove all the other species into their sterile structures. I composted on it all winter, he said, and when spring came, I simply continued what I had been doing, but took notes on the behavior. So the only thing you really did, the human finally inquired, was drop your leaves deliberately instead of randomly. And took notes, feeling the joy of generosity reminded him. The human laughed, and the Shatar flared her frill at the mammal in annoyance. So, what did you discover? The human asked, ignoring the Shatar. That most humans will consistently deviate from their path to compress a desiccated leaf, feeling the joy of generosity stated, but only for desiccated leaves, and only for leaves with a few feet off of their predesignated path. I will go slightly out of my way to step on that crunchy leaf, the human murmured in a delighted tone. What? The undulate asked in confusion. What? The human asked with a look of mock innocence. Humans are weird, let's work it out. Available on Indiegogo for the month of October 2022. Monty Python meets Star Trek in this third book of human absurdity. This book joins its two siblings in a trilogy of human madness. You can find the first two books, author-signed first editions, at Indiegogo with book 3, or you can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are available to get your copies of the first two books. Humans Are Weird, Let's Work It Out, book 3 in the series, available on Indiegogo, October 2022.